let's stay with Mark, because Mark is in the know when it comes to Wakanda Forever. Did you get that as a joke?
Not really.
Black Panther 2. Mark,
Yes,
tell us about the 3-hour thrill ride that is Marvel's Black Panther Wakanda Forever.
Okay. So, I mean, this was always going to be a very different kind of film, wasn't it? We all know the challenges, shall we say, the film had to face. I believe pre-production had started before Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate death, so they've had to completely retool the story to take that into account. And there was always a real worry about, well, what were they going to do? How were they going to address it? What tone was this film going to take? Is it going to turn into a miserable dour fest? And I think for
like
me,
the Eternals.
Yes. But I think, to be fair to all concerned, they did an absolutely superb job of walking that incredibly fine tightrope between honoring Boseman, honoring the character, and still making the film something of itself, still having it fit in with the MCU canon, still working, if you like, as part of the larger franchise. It doesn't shy away from the grief, the loss that obviously everyone concerned felt. You only have to see some of the interviews of the cast now that they're going around, about the impact of having to continue the story and do the film without Boseman with them. And there's no doubt about it. It is a more somber film. There are huge stretches in this film where, the typical MCU action fare just doesn't happen. There are ruminations of grief, of loss. There are long conversations about what it meant to have lost someone and what it means to carry on. The impacts of duty versus family. There's some real meaty human issues that are talked about in here, and for me, it did what it needed to do, and it should have done. It eschewed a lot of the typical action scenes. There were a number of action beats in it, as expected. There weren't that many, so it didn't feel like your typical smashy, crashy, whiz-bangy superhero movie. But that was okay, because it introduced us to Namor, it introduced us to the Atlanteans, the Talakans, and it spent a lot of time and invested a lot of time in them as a race, in Namor as a new antagonist. And so often in these superhero movies, we all come out of it going, oh, it was an underwritten villain, the villains were useless. Not so here. And they did something really interesting with him. They followed through both the personal and the political story through Namor as well. And so it felt different, but it felt more mature. It felt a mature response to what had happened. I really enjoyed it. However, I'm not blind to some of its obvious faults. At 2 hours, 40 minutes, it's very long, very long. It sets up an awful lot of plot beats that it then just discards the minute it doesn't need them anymore. It starts off with a brilliant scene where it places Wakanda in the international landscape. There are nations bemoaning the fact that Wakanda is not sharing its vibranium, and and there's an amazing fight scene to begin with that shows these nations, these so-called friendly nations, aren't afraid to get in their hands a bit dirty if they don't get what they want. But all of a sudden, the minute Namor's introduced, boom, all that goes away. It's completely forgotten about. So you've got people like Martin Freeman who play a very crucial role all the way through the first act and then just disappears. The new character Riri, is it Riri Thompson? Is that I can't remember the name. Riri Thompson, based at Ironheart, who's introduced in this. Very, very underwritten, very, very poorly defined. Literally a plot cipher and comedy sidekick and little else. So there are things wrong with it. And as you just pay a visit to the threads for people who can spot an awful lot of plot holes in the morass of plot that the film presents. But for me, I didn't even know what the film was going to be, how it would carry on. The bold decision to not recast T'Challa, the bold decision to basically go on without that main character. And I think the film did a superb job of paying its respects, but still being an MCU franchise entry in its own regard. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. However, I can see, because it's so different, I can see a lot of other people not enjoying it as much. So yeah.
Is it worth
That's
the
me.
cinema
That's
trip?
Wakanda.
Is it worth a cinema trip? That's the big question. Or can you wait till Disney Plus?
It's a tough one.
I've got you there.
It's a very tough one, because you've got to wait up, haven't you? 2 hours, 40 minutes is a long time in a cinema seat. So, we had the conversation with Kaz, didn't we? Kaz, one of Gina Harlow's, is a very big Black Panther fan, but even the debate there about what would a youngster do 2 hours, 40 minutes of that film in the cinema? And I think I said the answer was no. However, one thing I will say, there was a real so I went on Friday night to an IMAX. The first time the IMAX I've been to has been sold out. There was applause. It was a real cinema experience from that respect. Excellent. So I don't know is the simple answer. I think as a spectacle, it's your typical MCU, visual splendor, as it were. But I think that 2 hour, 40 minutes runtime is a challenge to all but the hardest of bladders.
Hardest of buttocks.
I don't like the way you said that with such relish, Simon.
He was into that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I enjoyed it.
I will, I'm sure, end up going to see it at some point, because I tend to.
You can.
And there's now else on.
Well, do you know what? You say that, but
Top Gun Maverick's still playing, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Almost certainly. Yeah, somewhere.